What is up, everybody? Just like every other podcast, welcome back to the DT show. Like, comment, subscribe. You guys know what to do. First and foremost, before I get started, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I also want to thank our great mods and subscribers. We're getting close. I think we're about 220 people away from getting to 50,000 subscribers. Truly appreciate it, guys. If you're not subscribed, if you hit that sub button, if you could share the content with your friends and family, your true crime friends and family, see if they'd be interested in and getting them to sign up and sub up. We're so close, 50K. It's just around the corner, guys. It's a huge milestone, and I want to thank everybody for getting us there. We're almost across the finish line. All right, so today we're going to go back into the Bryan Kohberger case. I was watching another, I think it was Brian Ensign. He was talking about some of the tips that were coming out referencing the possible location of where Bryan Kohberger's K-bar knife is. It's unknown, never been found. The only person who really knows where it's at is Bryan Kohberger, but he was talking about some of the tips and some of the things that had come through, and they had suspected that maybe possibly it was in the Snake River out there by, Lewiston or Clarkson, Washington. In fact, let's bring it up, the map real quick. So down here by Lewiston, Clarkson, Washington area, he was seen in this area. There's a couple of tips. I'm not necessarily sold on the idea that that's where it's at. And I have some ideas, and maybe perhaps we can deduce or narrow it down where, in fact, it is. There's some documents that kind of point to where law enforcement looked. There's some documents that point to some of the things that they tested, some soil, and we're going to break those things down and kind of deduce, where's a possible location for this K-bar knife. Now, I do know that there's a lot of time and a lot of information we don't know. So we're going to try to just do this as best as we possibly can. So first thing that I wanted to look into is the probable cause affidavit, because I think it's important to go back, right? And on the probable cause affidavit, it states here that at approximately 12:36 at 8:48, the 8458 phone utilizes cellular service provided for Kate's Cup of Joe Coffee. And this is in Clarkson, Washington. So he was down there. But the issue is, and I'm probably skipping ahead too far, is that when he leaves there, he turns his phone off. It says here the 8458 phone stops reporting to the network from approximately 5:36 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. That's consistent with the phone being in the area the 8458 traveled in the hours immediately following the suspected time of the homicide that occurred. Now, Bryan Kohberger's vehicle is seen traveling at a high rate of speed on Willenta Drive, or on towards Willenta Drive in front of the King Road residence. And that happens at 4:20 a.m. According to the documents, it's at 4:48 when his phone comes back onto the network. Now, that's 28 minutes. Now, he was seen traveling at a high rate of speed. He just committed a quadruple homicide. Dylan Mortenson had just seen him. He had seen her, according to the documents, and according to the recent interviews that we have seen with Bill Thompson, he is fairly positive that Bryan Kohberger saw Dylan Mortenson. So he's aware that somebody's aware of his presence there. So he takes off at a high rate of speed. So he's probably not driving the speed limit yet. It takes him 28 minutes to traverse. Let me pull it up. 9.25 miles. Check it out. So this I basically plotted it out. This is the trip that it took. So 28 minutes to travel 9.25 miles. Let's bring back where is it at? All right, so this is the trip. This is the route that I believe that he took. He exited the house, traversed behind the home through the neighborhood, exited out towards, like if he was going towards the back road to Pullman. In fact, at this intersection here, had he continued, he would have made it to Pullman in a short amount of time. But you can book it downward and then end up back on I-95. And this is the road that comes directly from out of Moscow. Now, I believe he took this route because, well, his phone ends up over here back on the highway. And there are cameras here that do not capture him leaving this area. So this is the only route that he could have taken to avoid the cameras right here. And this camera here at Mundy's Machine Shop should have caught him had he gone through there. And so it's only 9.5 miles to get here, 9.25 miles, and it's at 4:48 when his phone turns on. I strongly suspect that he went out there and he hid something. I think it was the container. I think the knife was a part of it. And his phone doesn't turn back off until 5:36 when he's in the Johnson area. And they indicate that he was in the area where he was at immediately following the homicides when his phone was off the night before. So they suspect that he went back to this area to pick up whatever it is that he left behind. So when he's in Clarkson, Washington, and he's over there by the Snake River, he's doing all these other things. There's, in my opinion, he doesn't have the knife with him. I think the knife is still hidden out here somewhere. He doesn't go back for it until 5:36 in the afternoon, per documents here. So 5:36 is when his phone turns off, and he's in the areas where he traveled immediately after the homicides. Now, there was a tip, and this one came in that somebody had seen a white vehicle on November 13th between 5:30 and 6 p.m. on Johnson Road near, I believe it's, they said when the pavement turns into a dirt road, there's a tree there, and he saw a white car out there between 5:30 and 6 p.m., which is around the time that Bryan Kohberger may have been out there. They ended up taking some soil samples of that area. And this goes on to say that they went and they looked around. They checked the area. They couldn't find anything of evidentiary value. They couldn't find any disturbances on the ground. And they also checked a nearby bridge, but they couldn't find anything. All right. So what they did find was that there was a shovel that was in Bryan Kohberger's trunk. Now, let's see. On Friday, March 1st, 2024, I received an email containing reports reference a soil found in a shovel recovered from Kohberger's Elantra. The soil in the shovel is consistent with soil found in the Moscow area based off of the expert's analysis. The report also stated the soil was likely not from anywhere east of Moscow, thus finding it to exclude Pennsylvania as a likely source of soil. And I looked it up. I was like, I wonder why. And it has to do with, I think, the wind and some other stuff that happens out there in Moscow that develops the soil in a certain way. And I'll go further into detail when we get there. But this goes on to say that the report stated that the soil from the shovel displayed characteristics of soil carried to the area via a water source. Through this could have been a recent any point in the area's geological history. So to me, that kind of sounds like a floodplain or an area that's got some water going through it quite a bit, but not consistent, and I'll explain why in a little bit, but because of the, I'm kind of jumping all over. I apologize, guys. So let me just kind of back up a little bit. So they found some soil on the shovel, and let's go to the next one real quick. Where is the one I'm looking for? Right here. So this says here, give me a second. So they found the soil to Moscow, and the crazy thing is, so I was like, all right, so what did Bryan Kohberger do, right? He's out there for 3 hours, and I was like, I wonder how far he can get, because he ends up back, I'm assuming back at his apartment complex at 806 or back in this area, or 836. And so I actually looked up, and he could have gone as far east as this I can't pronounce this, Dvorshock Reservoir, and then made it still back to Pullman within that 3-hour period. And so I was like, man, this is a far distance he could go. So I searched up and Google searched if the soil there at this reservoir would be similar to the soil out here in Moscow. And the results that I got was no. And basically as very quickly, as soon as you start heading east of Moscow, the elevation starts to change. I think there's more like mountainsides and things of that nature. And so because of those things, it creates a different type of soil as quickly as within 10 miles of east of Moscow. So this Palouse soil is westbound. And so I was like, all right, so he didn't go back this way. So I began to look back into the documents, and here it says here that on August 2nd, 2023, they responded to several locations around the Palouse in order to collect soil samples. These were identified as points of interest for soil collections, pictures and cellular data recovered from Kohberger's phone. A plastic shovel with dirt wedged into several locations was recovered during the search of Mr. Kohberger's white Elantra, and these samples were taken in order to compare them with the samples on the shovel. So the first thing that I saw out here was like, all right, this is a plastic shovel. What does that mean, right? And let me pull this up real quick. This here is this is a fiberglass shovel with a plastic handle and a steel end. So I don't know if it's one of these type of shovels. This is another one that's kind of small. I'm assuming it's a small shovel based on the fact that it was in Kohberger's trunk of an Elantra. This one also has a plastic handle with a fiberglass pole. And obviously this is not plastic. And then it could be one of these. Now, me personally, I don't think it's one of these, because if it was one of these type of shovels, I'm not sure you're going to go around all different areas and look at different soil samples, right? And two, it says that dirt was wedged into it. You kind of need some corners for dirt to be wedged into it. You need some corners, you need some edges. If you had, I mean, I'm not saying that you can have dirt caked onto this. And I think that if there was dirt on something like this, it would be considered caked on, not wedged into. So I don't know what kind. I mean, I don't put it past Bryan Kohberger to go out there and try to dig a hole to bury some evidence with something like this. He don't seem like the sharpest tool in the shed himself. But I would expect that it was probably some little shovel like this with a plastic handle and a plastic type pole with an edge for dirt to actually be wedged in. Now, the other type of shovel that it could have been that's plastic is a snow shovel. But those things are squared. And if you try to lift up dirt with those type of shovels, it's going to break. So I strongly suspect that this isn't the case. And this is also August 23rd, which the other interesting thing is, so these are the places that they went out to go and look. You have Kamiak Butte, you have Colfax Park, Clemgard Park, Wawawayi Park, and Johnson Road and Staley Road. Now, Johnson Road and Staley Road is where I told you guys that the person saw somebody out there. It says here, it should be noted that all the samples except number 6 were collected from public property. I obtained verbal samples, permission from JS, the owner of the property, where it was collected to do so. And it was for this one. This one's the only one, obviously, on private property. Now, they do get something back, and this is relative to the some pollen on the soil. So this goes on to say that reports details findings of the exam of the pollen contents in the soil found that the shovel will, in its comparison, the sample test for comparison. The report states that the soil and the shovel contain high amounts of pollen, pine pollen, and single pollen grains from plants that are not naturally distributed in Moscow, Idaho area. Basswood and redwood maple were found in the soil recovered from the shovel. However, both are commonly planted and they're commonly planted as decorative. So that told me right away that if this shovel was digging up some dirt, and it was some dirt that was close to some water source, and it was west of Moscow, and you're also looking at dirt that is probably on private property. If you're having plants that aren't found in the area, but that are commonly planted. So you're looking for private property area. And I found it interesting. If we go back to this is the places that they looked. They looked out here in the Colfax. They looked at Kamiak Butte, Kimgard, and then Wawawayi Park. And the interesting about Wawawayi Park, this was on on August 8, 2023. And if we go back to the alibi, which is right here, the alibi, I believe, was April 24 of 2020, April 17 of 2024. So they were out there at the Walleye Park before Bryan Kohberger gave his alibi. So they were able to determine that he was out there based off of his phone and other information, his phone and pictures and cell data, that he had been out there a few times. So they went to the places where his phone pinged that he went hiking and things of that nature. Now, most of these are public places. Now, I did some research on the different types of plants. Let me pull this up real quick that they were referring to. Oh, wrong way. We'll be talking about that in a second. So red maple, and it talks about that it wants moisture, including floodplains, but grows well in well-drained areas. Doesn't like saturated type of soil. Brasswood, also well-drained, fertile. Silty loam, that alluvial silty loam, that is what is that silty loam is what was described. That's really quite a bit in the Moscow area. And that alluvial is what they describe the water. And what that is like, you know how like on the edge of where water is and it ripples, that it kind of does this weird stuff to, I guess, the sand. You can kind of see it, or the dirt. That disturbance in it is, I guess, what you can determine it being carried by water. That's what that means. And so they're not found in the Moscow area. And the interesting thing is also, so these are the areas that they went. They went to these public places. I thought that was odd. And so I began to look around, and lo and behold, let me see. So I looked in these areas, and I was like, I don't know if he's going. So Bryan Kohberger is a different type of guy, right? He's a weird type of dude. He's even different than most other kind of offenders that commit these type of crimes. For instance, when he went out to the crime scene at 9 o'clock in the morning, that was because the crime hadn't been found. He lived fairly close, and yet after that, once the scene was found, he never went back. You know, he wasn't Papa Rogers. Papa Rogers, if he was Papa Roger, that would have been an indication of somebody who was like, of somebody who's like a modern way of inserting yourself into the case, you know, being a part of the discussion, you know, those type of things. He didn't do those things. He didn't follow the victims online, you know, those type of things. So to me, I thought when he mentioned Walleye Park, he's not going to go and hide something of this nature somewhere that he can be traced to, in my opinion. And I started looking around, right? Now, one of the things that I know is that with pine is typically green, right? And pine is green all year long. Even in the winter, it doesn't turn red. And maple does. Now, when I was starting to look around some of these areas, I was looking at these trees. I was looking at the farm areas. If you notice, all the farming is harvested. So this image here is in the fall, right? Maple turns red. Maple trees turn red. And the crazy thing about maple trees turning red, I don't know if you guys can see this or not. Let me make this bigger. You have some maple trees along this area here in Albion. Now, you have a little creek over here, South Fork, Palouse River, and you have a lot of farming around here. Now, I'm not saying that this is where he was digging. I don't know for sure, but I went through a lot of other places. There are no red trees anywhere else. All green, all pine. That's what is prevalent in this area. There, you can go to any other place. Now, you guys tell me. You guys can go on Google Earth and look for it. You guys show me where you guys can see some more red trees. But I think that's one of the things you would be looking for. you should be looking for some red trees. And I'm assuming you're looking for private property. And now you have farming. What happens in farming? They have to water the plants and things of that nature. So that's why perhaps some of these red trees here are the reason why. I mean, some of these trees that are this maple tree and this basswood tree, these are the kind of conditions that you would expect to find for them. And so you guys tell me what you guys think. So I think that there's a good possibility there. There's so much I was going to go through, and I completely went in probably the worst order ever. So I apologize for putting it in this order here. But we have, just to kind of put it all together, you have soil from Moscow area, right? You also have Bryan Kohberger leaving the crime scene, taking like a long period of time before his phone turns back on, based on where he was at. It takes him 28 minutes to drive 9 miles. So he was doing something out there, right? And then the next day at 5:30, he turns his phone off, and then he's gone for about 3 hours. Assuming that he was in the same area that he was the night before, he's probably going out there to go pick up the stuff that he left, the kill kit. Then he has to travel back somewhere else. Now, the reason why I think that this area is also probably a big possibility is that it's on its way to his hiking trails. So if he was going to the Colfax Park or even the Kamiag, but he can go through here. You can find this route here also to get to Chemgard. And so he can traverse back through there without it being a spot that is really tied to him in that manner. Now, like I said, I don't know if it's actually here, but there's a lot of red trees out here. And the good thing about this picture being in fall is that it lets you see the red trees and the changing of the colors of the trees, which you can't find anywhere else. That's my place of interest. Now, I did find some other things that were pretty interesting. Let me pull it up. Where'd it go? Here it is. All right. So when I went back to try to find some information on the shovel itself, I wanted to look at one of those documents that was referring to some of the things that Bryan Kohberger had in his trunk. Now, this was on June 27, 2025. It says here, on June 26, 2025, I searched through Kohberger's vehicle looking for the following items, which were on his Amazon purchase history ordered on June 20th, 2022. And so these are items that Bryan Kohberger ordered back in June before the murders. He was looking for a lead brand scissor jack, an EP Auto heavy duty lug wrench, a Dorman 26021 spare tire, workside tire inflator, and some other things. Right now, he goes into the vehicle and he says he located the following items that matched what was purchased in the Amazon from the Amazon: the no brand 70-piece tire repair kit, the Cartman warning triangle, no brand scissor jack. Now it says here he located a brand new spare tire in the trunk, which Bryan Kohberger just bought a spare tire, right? But he ordered. So is it the same one? Maybe. It says which did not have a brand name on it. There was a barcode on the sticker on the back of the rim with the product number 926016. Now, the spare tire that Bryan Kohberger purchased had a barcode of 926021. So that's a different spare tire. He goes on to say, I searched the internet for this item, 926016, and it was directed to partsgeek.com. Dorman spare tire, 2011 to 17 Hyundai Accent. I searched the internet for the Dorman 926021 spare tire for the 2011 19 Hyundai Elantra. Located a photo of the product on PartsGeek. Both the 926016 and the 021 photos from partsgeek.com were identical to the spare tire located in the trunk. Took multiple photos. So basically what this means is that they were able to find items that Bryan Kohberger purchased alongside a brand new spare rim and tire back in June. And by the time that they arrested him, he didn't have another tire. He had a whole or another spare tire. He had a whole nother spare tire and wheel by the time they arrested him just 6 months later. He got rid of it. Now, it goes on to say that there were some other items. The one other Amazon purchased item, which was not located in Kohberger's vehicle, was a worksite tire inflator, air compressor portable, 20-volt cordless tire pump, 150 PSI with digital pressure gauge, rechargeable battery, and 12-volt car power adapter. So that's something you're probably anticipating to find in your trunk. So his spare tire was brand new, even though he had just bought one 6 months earlier. He had another one from Parts Geek. And I would assume the inflator is also missing. That is probably in the trunk. So that probably means that he put his kill kit in the trunk before he left, and probably blood or DNA got on both of the items, or he's scared about it, so he got rid of them and bought a new spare tire. And so that's where that one is. So interesting, that I think that's just when people ask why wasn't there any DNA in the car, those type of things. This is in my opinion, evidence that he put probably the kill kit, he may have changed clothes before he got into his car, all those things, and he put it in his trunk, and he didn't trust the items that were in the trunk with it, and he got rid of it. So when people ask, why isn't there DNA in the car, this, that, and the third? Well, look, I mean, he's getting rid of things. He's selling, or he's destroying or selling, or I don't know what he did with it, but he did something. He destroyed it. He threw it away, whatever the case may be. It's missing. It's no longer there. There's two items that are missing. One is the pump, and the other thing is that he replaced a brand new spare tire and wheel. And, I would think it's one thing to replace the wheel, the tire, right? Let's just say he got a flat and then he got another flat on the spare. So you want to replace the tire. I mean, unless he got a flat, put on the spare and decided to go crazy and it hit something and he bent the rim up and he needed a new one. I think it's probably the other. I think he didn't feel confident after he placed his kill kit in that trunk. All right, let's see. And just to kind of re-explain all this, because I feel like I didn't really do the greatest job about where that knife was. Basically, what I was trying to say is that Bryan Kohberger his phone was off for too long when he left the house. The very next day, or a little bit later on that day, he's back in that area with his phone off again. Probably an indication that he went to go recover whatever it is that he went and hid. His phone is off for a significant amount of time. It's probably an indication of him moving those items to another location and also just, hiding them or destroying them, either or in that other location, and then making his way back home. Now there's a shovel. Now the shovel may have nothing to do with him. He got rid of the other items. So a lot of people, might say, why would he continue to have the shovel? That's a great question. I don't know, but maybe he felt like it wasn't in contact with anything outside of the dirt. That if they found it, there wouldn't be any DNA on it. I don't know, but that shovel had soil that was consistent with Moscow and heading west, and there was pollen in it that was consistent with trees that aren't from that area. And the pollen from the trees not from that area, kind of lead you to believe that, well, those trees, one, are also commonly planted. Leads you to believe that it's one on private property, because you're not going to most likely find trees not native to an area, in an area that is, held up by like national park or whatever the case. Well, anyways, so it's probably a private area. And then you have the fact that some of those that pollen comes back to a maple tree, which blooms red in the fall. And in this area out here, which is on the path to some of the parks that he goes to, you have this one town that has a lot of red trees all around it. And the crazy thing is too, right? So I put myself out here on the ground, and it's hard to tell, right? Obviously it's the wrong time of year. So let's change that. This is October. Now this is 2008. You can see it's kind of hard to see. Man, they made it dark. But out in the back there, there was some red trees. I got to find where I was at. I don't know. It didn't look this dark when I was looking at it earlier. Then again, I also didn't have my shades on. I sent it a grok. I was like, hey, do these look like maple trees? And there you go. This is a little bit more lighter. I don't know if these are maple trees. I don't know I just know that they bloom red and that the pine don't. Go back. Well, yeah, somewhere in the back area. It's hard to tell. You know what? It may have been in September when I saw. There we go. I think it was September. I was like, it wasn't that dark when I was looking at it. I don't know if these are maple trees or not. These are turning orange. I don't know what. I'm not familiar with trees, but I think these red ones in the back. But the good thing about the area here is, like I mentioned, you can tell based on the farmland around here that this aerial footage is taken at harvest. So this is in the fall. You can tell that there's no green grass now. If you wanted to see what this area looks like in the summer, you know, hold on. Let me go back. Let's put us right. See how green and stuff everywhere is. And when you go into this mode here, it turns darker. I mean, there's still some green here, but you got some trees that are different shades there. Oh, they seem red all year round. But I would check out this area. This area here has some red trees around it. And this one is on the way to some of these parks where Bryan Kohberger could have or would have traversed through to get to. Maybe not the Kamiak. I think you would have probably gone this direction up to Fallon. But if you're Bryan Kohberger's apartment complex is like up here. I know that's where he pinged. I think that's actually might be where it's at. So if he takes up this road here towards Kitzmiller, then he'd be heading this direction. So he would be kind of familiar. And from here, you can head up to Clemgard. You can head up to Colfax and so many other places. Are they going to release the and that's the other thing too. I don't know what he did with the spare tire and all that other stuff that he had. He probably buried the clothes with the shovel. I would assume that he buried something. Is there any new info? The new info that we have is based off of these documents that were dropped from Moscow Police Department. It talks about the soil and the shovel being consistent with it being in Moscow, or at least west of Moscow, not east. It talks about some pollen, and the pollen being near the Idaho area, having a high amount of pine and basswood and red maple, which are not from the area but are commonly planted. And so this kind of tells us a few of the places where they searched. And Yeah, so this is one of the tips. So some of the other tips that they had were for Bryan Kohberger going to um, while he was in Washington. I think they may have seen him. I think they may have seen him. I think they may have seen him in a couple of different places. I don't know if they saw him walking back from the water. It's a good possibility that they did. The only problem I have with it is, he when he left Moscow, he was on that road for quite a bit of, like 28 minutes to travel 9 miles. He stopped somewhere, in my opinion, and just kind of hid. I think he hid the items. I could be wrong. Maybe he took them all the way with him. I don't know. Maybe he stopped somewhere, during that time to change out his spare. Maybe he got a flat and he changed out his spare, and that's why the spare is missing too. I have no idea. What's up with the maple tree? So the maple tree thing is because it says here that on the shovel that was in Bryan Kohberger's trunk, there was soil. The soil had pine, pollen, and it also had a mixture of basswood and red maple, which were found, which are not from the area, but are both commonly planted. So that's why there's the maple tree comes into play. Now, obviously, this could have been a lot of different places, but it sounds like to me, I'm leaning more towards it being a private area. Some of these parks, I don't foresee them being cool with, going in there and throwing in plants that aren't native to the area in these national parks. I just don't see that being a thing. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But I would assume that these plants these red maple plants that aren't common to the area, probably planted in private places. And, I would assume that this is a place that Bryan Kohberger probably doesn't want to come back to him, that he's been there, but a place that he can pass by and drive and still see it. But yeah, these are the areas where they went out there and collected soil samples. Now, I don't think that this was high on their list for law enforcement as far as possibility of locations, because they didn't go out there and collect soil samples until August. They got back the soil pollen stuff on April. So they waited like 4 months, for them to say, all right, well, we got the results back to go out there and actually get soil samples. So that tells me that this probably wasn't high on their list. But then again, it sounds like they were barking up the wrong tree on some other things. For instance, when I talked to Steve, he mentioned that he felt that that law enforcement was looking at other things that were not feasible, and kind of stuck on certain things. So is it possible they just kind of overlooked this? Or, even if you go back to, like, for instance, the Richard Allen case, how law enforcement overlooked some of that information and they kind of had to go back to it later. Maybe that's one of these type of things, but they waited 4 months to go get samples, to go get tested, to see if they had somewhat similar type of, pollen and things of that nature. And so, but that's where that comes from, basswood and red maple. Let me see if I have anything. Oh yeah, I forgot that. This is the spare tire thing that Bryan Kohberger purchased, or at least the one that was in his trunk. This is the the Dorman 2011 and 19 Hyundai Elantra. All right, put a couple of stars, and let me know what you guys are saying. And those are northwest of Pullman. Yes, these are all northwest of Pullman, and these are the areas where they search. So they weren't going to go out there and search east of Moscow, because as soon as you start heading east, the soil starts to change immediately. As soon as you start to head east, the soil starts to change. It's no longer the same. This is the Palouse area, all back here. And so it was somewhere here. And again, the fact that it had pollen in the soil mix that wasn't common to the area leads me to believe that's a private area. And, the only place that I've seen, it's a big area, and he could have gone in many different directions. So I'm not saying it's 100% there. Don't try to twist my arm into saying that, oh yeah, it's 100% in these trees somewhere. But what I would do if I was law enforcement, or if any of you guys are advantageous, go out there and see if you can find like red trees like this, red trees like that, because this is the fall. This is the fall. And as you can see, the reason we can tell this is fall is because all of the crops are harvested. Harvest happens in the fall, and pine is always green. And that is what is native to the area, are the pine trees. The maple trees aren't. And so this area leading all the way up to I think it's Albion. You have red trees there, red trees, some red trees. You have some water, more red trees. And like, again, this is from leaving Bryan Kohberger's home, this is the area that you would travel to go hike. So let's go back in time to when Bryan Kohberger may have hid these items. This was very early on. If you go back and you start looking at his searches, right? He stopped searching for K-bar knives and knife sheaths after he left Moscow. He didn't search for them again while he was in Pennsylvania. And so to me, that tells me that he got spooked on that drive. If you go back and you listen, and you know what, I'll probably do this week, and we'll go through the interrogation. We'll talk about how he got spooked. He talks about another traffic stop or almost traffic stop, that while they were driving, that a vehicle pulls up behind him very quick, and that he thought it was interesting. And that's what he told police. Then we also know that he gets pulled over twice in Indiana. He's probably thinking that they're onto him. But before that time, before the bolo comes out, before he traverses across country with his pops in the car, I think he's looking for a replacement, not necessarily because he's wanting a replacement in case somebody comes knocking. I think he's looking for a replacement because he's going to commit the crime again. But I do think that he had every full intention of going back to Washington after the Christmas break. I think the plan was for him to fly home. And then when the bolo came out, he orchestrated a situation so that his dad could fly across country, and they can take the car that was seen on the camera at the murder house away from the area. That was the sole intention. That's why Michael Kohberger buys a plane ticket from December 10th to fly out on December 11th, to fly out immediately. This is right after Bryan Kohberger gets in an altercation with Professor Snyder. And I think he manipulated the entire situation. He manipulated the argument. He probably thought it wasn't going to be one that he couldn't argue his way out of. But he needed to create a situation so that he can get his father to fly cross country, cancel their plans, and get the car out of there as quickly as possible. But had it gone to, like, let's just say the bolo didn't come out and it didn't panic him, I think he would have left the car behind and he would have flown across country and then anticipate on flying back. I think that the altercation with Professor Snyder probably doesn't happen, and I think he's going to be a TA for the spring semester, and he has full intention of going to these places to hike and things like that. And on his way, you have a trail of red trees, maple trees in this area that lead up there near a river, near water. Which, again, the other thing too, so you have these farm areas, right? Well, you need to water these areas to keep the farms, alive. And so that would probably make the soil consistent to be carried with water. So this is a farming area all around here. I think I finally explained it right. Been trying to figure out a way to explain it right. I think I finally did. But yeah, these are all northwest of Pullman in this Palouse area. And I think this gives Bryan Kohberger enough time in 3 hours to traverse from Johnson, Idaho, come over here, pick up pick up the kill kit, anything, whatever he left behind, and then get back over here, and then back home by 8 o'clock. I mean, it's not very far. I mean, if you were to leave just as the crow flies, let me change this real quick. Why is it not letting? I don't. Oh yeah, that's not true. Hold on. I think that's meters. Yeah, I was like, that's not miles. All right, let's zoom out a little bit. So if he goes back over here, and I'm just going to make it kind of like a rough estimate, and then traverses back. So right there, that's 10 miles. Dang it. It's 10 miles to there. So we just got to add that on. And then back through town or around town. I'm just going to go around like this. Again, this is as the crow flies. It's not really, that's another 7. So that's 17 miles or so. So roughly 20, put it, let's just double it just to add all the curves and loops. So 40 miles, 40 to, we'll even add an extra 10, 50 miles to get to where Johnson, Washington, to where, close to the murder house, if you want to go that far, to the victim's house, and then come all the way back and then all the way up to this area. It's 40, 50 miles. I mean, that shouldn't take you more than maybe an hour and 20 minutes, because the traffic here the speed limit isn't very fast out here. So even though he kind of drives fast, he's only going like 9, 8, 10 miles over the speed limit. It's still going to take him some time to traverse that. It's like 50, 60 miles an hour tops in some of these places. A lot of places are like 40 miles an hour, 35 miles. And so he's probably averaging about 50 miles an hour. So it's probably going to take him more than an hour just to get to the location. And then from there, get to where this point of interest is. And then you still have a couple hours for him to do whatever it is that he's doing out there. And then get back from there back to Pullman, to his home, which I'm assuming is where he was when his phone turns back on. That information isn't been told to us. Did he stop for 10 minutes by a tree? Well, the thing is, we got to find that type of tree, right? It's a maple tree. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's directly next to it, because it wasn't like a high amount of maple pollen. There was some maple pollen and basswood pollen, but the majority of it was pine. So I wouldn't think it was right next to a maple tree, but I would say it's probably in the general vicinity of one. And, you have these red trees that branch out this way. And again, I don't know if they're maple trees or not, but they're red. What about just any dumpster? That's a possibility too. I mean, yeah, that's a possibility too. Red maple could have been purposefully planted on U of I campus. That's true, but Bryan Kohberger would have. I don't know if he went digging on the U of I campus. I know that there are some areas in Washington, WSU has them planted, and Botanical something or another has them there too, out there with WSU. But I don't know if I don't know. I think those places are a little bit too public for him to go out there and like hide or dig up something to dispose something like this. I think he needs to be a little bit more in an area where there's not very many people, in an area where he can hide, an area that if cars pass by, they don't see him out there. And so you got to add some time to that, to that 3 hours. You have to add him going out there, picking up the items that he left behind, him traveling from there all the way back, him parking somewhere, him walking from where he parked with those items somewhere else, him hiding those items, then him walking back. I mean, all that takes time. So it starts to dwindle out. So this 40-50 mile drive that he did to get to possibly out here somewhere in this area where these maple trees are, possible maple trees are, I think it's plausible. I mean, they went as far out as Colfax. So if they can think that it's possible for him to get to Colfax, do the things that I mentioned, and then still get back home within that 3 hour time frame, then definitely this area is more than plausible. Let's see. Remember when the guy that lived by him in the woods would acted like they were best mates? What if he was digging already? You know, that's a good possibility, right? Maybe he felt confident with not getting rid of the shovel, so to speak. Maybe he went out there earlier at some other time, dug up something. That way it didn't take him long. That's a possibility. And maybe that's why he felt comfortable with retrieving the shovel, because it wasn't in the trunk at the same time as the kill kit. It's possible. But he got rid of the spare tire. That's a big clue to me. That's a big clue that he got rid of the spare tire. And I personally think that he got rid of the spare tire because he probably wasn't confident that there wasn't DNA on it. And so he got rid of that and got a new one. What if it's from Colorado? It's not, because I asked if the soil cannot go like very far west. Once you start going west, you start getting into elevation and you start getting into a bunch of things that changes the way the soil is. It's the way that, let me pull it up. Let's see. It says here the soil in the shovel is consistent with soil found in Moscow area based off of the analysis. The report also stated the soil was likely not from anywhere east of Moscow, because as soon as you start heading east, you start getting into the mountains. So whatever he used that shovel for was while he was still in this area. It says here the report stated that soil from the shovel displayed characteristics of soil carried to the area via a water source. This could have been recent or at any point of the area geological history. By them saying that, it kind of also makes me believe that this is a floodplain. This is not something that is constantly underwater, based on how they reference this. During the conversation, he stated that the exact area the sample came from would likely not be attainable due to the prominence of mineral compounds from the sample that found throughout the Moscow area. So a lot of compounds, a lot of stuff in it, but they were able to determine that it was from that general area of Moscow. Reports also stated that this is a little bit later. They ended up getting some soil. They ended up getting a pollen out of it, and that there was the shovel contained high amounts of pine pollen, and single pollen grains from plants that are not naturally distributed in Moscow, Idaho area. Basswood and red maple were found on the soil recovered from the shovel. However, both are commonly planted ornamental species, meaning that they are commonly planted by people and they want them at their house. So that told me is most likely. Now, again, a bird can land on a maple tree somewhere and fly a significant amount of distance and land on something else. The wind can blow right, and then that pollen can fall on the dirt beneath of it. I mean, those things are highly possible. I would reckon that they're going to be fairly close within. I don't think it's going to be very, very far away from where maple trees are, whether it's one maple tree or multiple. Let's see. We'll put a couple of stars, guys, so let me answer your questions. Ground was frozen. Not necessarily. It was warming up during the day. It was warming up during the day. It was if it was like mid-December, January, then yeah, 100%. But it was warming up during the day. I don't know if it would stay cold enough for the ground to be frozen, because for the ground to freeze, it has to be consistent consistent cold throughout the day and night, freezing temperatures throughout the day and night. I'm not sure if that's the case. In the middle of November. Yeah, it is hiking spot. It's possible. Planted as in putting a plant in the ground, not planting as in evidence. Yeah. Let me move this real quick. I got a cable that's in my way, blocking all the. There it is. Red maples are different from sugar maples. Sugars turn in the fall. Red maples stay red all year until they shed their leaves. Look for higher. Oh, well, that makes sense because in some of these areas, it was showing spring or summer, and there was some red trees back there, and I was like, oh, that's a good point. Thank you, Jude. I appreciate that. Pre and post Kohberger, that's how it sounds. Daniel, can you pull a Zillow for 5904 Johnson Road and tell me what you think? I can try real quick. 5904 Johnson Road. I want to know what's up there. Those red trees. Interesting. And this house is for sale, so that is awesome. That's a good catch. But there are some red trees back there. I don't know who would live there, but this place is for sale. A few minutes from Pullman, 6 acres. This private well. How long has it been for sale? It's for sale now. Was it for sale in 2022? It looks like it's possible. It looks like it needs some work inside. Interesting. Good catch. Some red trees out there. Thank you, Blackhawk. I have a question for Daniel. Yeah, please put a couple of stars. That way I can keep up. Heart of the Monster Jurisdiction, a fantasy collage. Thank you. Have you watched the complete 15 mini animation listed for Dateline? If not, watch. I saw Dateline. I'm not sure if I recall the 15-minute animation that you're referring to. Dane, do you think he moved it, possibly couldn't path with it, or took it on his road trip home? I mean, that's possible. They were watching him fairly soon after he got there for about a week. So I think that if he was visiting somewhere, which I do think that on one occasion he went to the edge of town and then drove back, which is weird. But if he was visiting somewhere, or he may have buried it, I have a strong suspicion they would have found it. I don't think he took it with him. I think he put it somewhere, and it's been there since this day when his phone turned off. But there's the chance that he could have taken it. I can't say for sure. I think that would have been dangerous, and I think he got rid of it then. And had he carried it with him, I think that would have that could have led to him possibly bringing in DNA from the victims back into his vehicle. And he was pretty, based on the documents and reports that he wrote and things of that nature, seems like he's pretty conscientious of not adding DNA to the scenes of places, or he was pretty conscientious about DNA. And so even though he left DNA behind, that's what ended up catching him, and that's what got him caught. I just doubt it. I doubt it, but it's possible. I just think he had it there. Do you think he hit it on one of the bike trails? I don't, because there's a lot of pictures and things of that nature on his phone. That's the reason why they were able to find those locations. I strongly doubt that he's going to hide the item in a place that can trace back to him like that. He chose his victims because they didn't trace back to him. Everything about him is so that it doesn't trace back to him. You know what I mean? He didn't follow them. These are people from the neighboring town. They had no connection to him. To me, the motive was always been like a thrill. And he wanted to feel what it felt like to take the life of somebody. And I just don't think he would have left it somewhere that would have traced back to him. Now, the reason why I think this area is possible is because this is like a random route on a random road going to that area. And but possible. It's for sale. Price just dropped again. But how long has it been for sale? Was it for sale during the time that, November of 2022? Shovel samples could be from Pennsylvania, Redmond. No, because the soil is from Moscow. Soil is from Moscow. Like the pollen is from those areas, but the soil itself is not. The soil is from Moscow, and they specifically said that it could not be from anywhere east of Moscow. It's west of Moscow. So no. A lot. I wondered about that too, but no. And it's ingrained into the soil, so it was from the maple wood and the brasswood. Pollen was ingrained into the soil. So what's this? Soil in the shovel contain high amounts of pine pollen and single pollen grains. Maybe not ingrained, but single pollen grains from plants that are naturally distributed in Moscow. Are not naturally distributed, but the pine is, and the actual soil itself could not come from anywhere east of Moscow. So whatever he dug up with that shovel was west of Moscow. Do you think he was wearing those clothes in the thumbs up to not look suspicious? He may have had a suitcase filled with the kill kit used and weapons, maybe even chain something to pull it. I think it's possible. I mean, he was wearing that outfit. There are some tips that are here that speak about seeing somebody dressed nice. This one is the one that says that somebody was in Clarkson, Washington. Now they say that it was between 10 and about 10 o'clock in the morning, and they've been to pick up donuts. And then they got the alert of the U of I alert on Facebook, which is impossible for them to have gotten the alert at 10 a.m. So we already know that that's off. This would have been closer to 1, which would have been around the time. If they saw the alert right when it came out, it would have been closer to 1 o'clock, which would have been the time that Bryan Kohberger was out there. And she said she noticed the man in front of her who she thought could have been Kohberger. Said that the man was wearing khaki pants, brown shoes, a salmon-colored button-up shirt, surgical COVID-type mask, and purple surgical gloves. This sounds like this was probably him. She just got the time wrong. Blackhawk says it's right off Johnson Road. Easy in, easy out. Nice little mini forest out back. Yeah, it's interesting. It's very possible. It's very possible. But I would be looking for that. I'd be looking for red trees. And they should stick out. They should stick out. I think it's chained in the water as a nod to Bundy. He put it where the body was. He's put it where a body was found. Maybe page 118 gives a clue. Maybe. We still don't know what that is. Bill Thompson was asking. He has no idea. Can you share Steve's theory of where the knife might be? I broke down this theory about where the knife is, and it seemed like he was following along with where I was saying. Wouldn't be surprised if there's some searches and stuff like that a little bit later. But he knows where they searched. He knows a couple of other places that they've looked. But yeah, I broke this down to him. I was like, look, this area right here, you can see the red trees. I would look in this area. I think that this area is consistent with mean, it's an area that he would have driven through to get to the hiking places that he went to. And so he would have known about it. It's familiar. It's close to water. There's red trees in the area. It's west of Moscow, so it has the soil potential, the pollen. I would test the soil in that area if I was law enforcement. At the very least, you're gonna have to ask permission because it's all private property. But I think that's where he probably put it at, on private property. Not something that somebody publicly is going to go stumble upon. He may have buried the knife on the way to PA while his father slept in a hotel. No, I don't think so, because the soil came from Moscow. And by then, I mean, it is winter time now. Full-fledged winter almost. Towards because when is winter? I think like December 20 something. 21st is when I think it's technically winter. There was a lot of snowy conditions coming in while he was going up out there. So I doubt it. Plus the soil came back, and that's if the soil had anything to do with it. There's a good possibility, guys, that shovel was purchased later and he went to somebody's yard and was playing in the dirt or something. There's a high possibility of that. But if the shovel had anything to do with the concealment of the kill kit or the knife, it was left in Moscow or west of Moscow. Didn't a lady see a man that looked like him near Costco? Weird, near Costco. Yeah, there was this one, and then there was this one where it says here, I asked T what made her decide to speak to me on this date. T told me that her good friends had convinced her to come and talk to MPD, and at least convey to law enforcement. And I asked her to tell me what she knew, and she told me that that she and her husband went to Costco in Clarkston, and on the 13th to pick up new glasses for T. She told me that they left Costco around it's about between 2 and 2:30 that afternoon and drove north across the Red Wolf Bridge. T told me when they turned eastbound on the highway on the bridge, they saw a man walking in the grassy area between the river and the highway. T stated that they thought that was strange, that there was nothing for anyone to be doing there. T stated the man was walking eastbound and noticed her staring at him. T said the man looked up at her and then appeared to look down and avoid the gaze. I asked T what the man looked like. T said she hadn't seen much news coverage regarding Kohberger, but that she had seen much of the news coverage regarding Kohberger, and that was what came to her mind, but that she was not certain he was the person that she saw. I asked her if the man that she saw would match Kohberger's appearance, and she said it would. I asked T what the man was wearing, and she told me she thought it was strange as the man was wearing nice clothes. I asked if a business casual was a fair classification, and she said it was. So, I mean, this sounds like they have visual Bryan Kohberger wearing business casual clothing. There's probably is a witness that saw him wearing something similar, and they saw him out here. Problem is the soil wouldn't match the shovel out in Clarkston or Lewiston as it would out in Moscow. It's different terrain, different elevations and things of that nature. And then the other issue is this is before he turns his phone off and goes back into the area where he was the night before, and his phone was off at that time. And so those are the only two things that kind of make me wonder what's going on. Now, it's very well possible, very plausible that he went out there, tossed the knife, and he had other items that he wanted to bury, trophies, maybe something smaller. Maybe he took something, jewelry, clothing, socks. I think one of the victims was missing a sock. Maybe that's what he took out there with his little plastic, shovel and dug up and hid something like that somewhere out there. It's quite possible. That's plausible. But I strongly suspect that he left, that based on the timing, him being out there for 28 minutes after the murders, and when his phone turns on, he's only 9 miles away, and it's been 28 minutes since he's left that house. You know, the math ain't mathing there. He was doing something out somewhere out there. And then for him to turn his phone off the very next day to go back into that same area tells me he went to go get something or went to go out there again. Now, the other interesting thing is the PCA does mention that on November 14th, so the very next day, Bryan Kohberger doesn't go to work, right? And it says that his phone connects to a tower that services Moscow, but they don't believe that he's there. You know, is it possible that he buried his kill kit or whatever, and then he's I don't know, stories are getting around that they're looking for a knife sheath. I mean, they're looking for a K-bar knife, and there are some stories are going around that maybe he left the knife sheath behind. I don't know. Maybe he goes back to try to find, see if he left it somewhere. I don't know. You know, there's a lot of things. You know, I was wondering maybe he went to his burial site and realized the sheath wasn't there. So then he went back to where he had hid the items the night before to see if maybe it fell out of the container and was there on the ground. But that's just speculation on my part, you know, when it comes to that. Let's see. I heard that he feared flying, but I think that was an excuse for the car travel. Don't believe it. That's what he told that's what the officer said. Oh, you're driving way across town. What, are you afraid of flying? And he's like, yeah. But I don't believe that was going to be the case. And the reason I don't believe that was the case was because when he was in Pennsylvania, one of his friends messaged him, or somebody that considered him a friend, another TA, asking him a question about something. And he had responded something to the effect that he was getting ready to fly across country to go home for Christmas. And in this article, or not in the article, in the document, and this is one of the documents from Moscow, he said that it was weird because he told him that even though he was already in Pennsylvania by this time. I think that was the original plan, was for him to fly across. And I think that when the bolo came out, he panicked, he freaked out. He got into an argument with Professor Snyder. He utilized that argument and that situation so that way he can manipulate his father into flying across town or cross country and removing the vehicle that he used that night and getting it out of Dodge. But I have no idea if he was afraid of flying or not. Midwest comes in with $1.99. Thank you so much, Midwest. And DD Fuentes also came in a little bit earlier with $3. Thank you, guys. You guys are amazing. I appreciate you guys always coming in and helping out. Do we know what they did in Colorado? And evergreens turned brownish red. Yeah, but the soil was from Moscow. So the pollen in the soil showed the maple trees and stuff. So it's a clue to where we can narrow it down that whatever he buried or used that shovel for, he did it in Moscow. Now, it doesn't mean he didn't take the knife with him. He could have buried it, could have unburied it, and took it with him, and then thrown it out somewhere on the trip to Colorado. That's 100% possible, 100% possible. But if, you know, based on what we do know, and we don't even know that this was used to bury the kill kit and the knife and stuff. Something was dug up somewhere by Bryan Kohberger in the Moscow area before his arrest, before he left the area. And it had pine, it had basswood, and it had maple pollen in it. But the soil was from Moscow. So again, it's 100% possible that he took it across country. I can't deny that. Is it a rural area with cows or other animals around? So the area that I'm thinking of, it is a rural area. There's a city attached to it up here, but this seems to be more farming. You know, it seems like they harvested this land here. They harvested this one. Look at this one. All of this right here. Tremendous amount of harvested land. So I don't, I'm not a farmer. I'm not in this area, but I don't, none of this screams like a horse farm or like a cow farm or any of those type of things. That's true. He definitely has dispelled quite a bit. Maybe he had predicted a while back in the summer. I mean, maybe. He did buy the knife before he ever went out there, so this is a possibility. I'm tracking, but also acting as devil advocate. What are you acting as devil advocate? I didn't see it, Tim. Put it back in there. Daniel, what did the report say about the soil? The report was that the soil was from Moscow area, did not travel. It's not from anywhere east of Moscow. So Colorado, Pennsylvania, Utah, all those areas, Indiana, Colorado, all of them are out of the question. And that the soil had contents of pollen, one, which is prevalent in the area, which is pine, two, which aren't, which is maple tree, red maples or maple tree and basswood. And both of them are commonly planted, is what they said, but not from the area. So to me, that tells me you were looking at private area, private land, and we're looking at obviously you're probably not going to find a lot of red trees in these parks where he was at. And as you can see, there really aren't. These are national parks. That's a county park. Colfax Park. This is another county park. A lot of pine. Not very many red trees, but these are the places they went and took soil samples of. I would have looked for I don't know. I'm not from the area, but it didn't take me very long to find this area here with a bunch of red trees. And again, like I'm not saying it's specifically this area. It could be a little bit further away from this area, but I would think that it's probably kind of close. And then we did find another house that was for sale by Black Hawk, and there was some red trees on the back. Yep, and it was for sale before the crime. So could be an interesting spot. I remember seeing news footage of the investigators taking the tire track marks in front of the house on King Road. Is it possible he had a spare on? Or does that make no sense? I guess that's possible that he had a spare on. Maybe that's why he got rid of the spare. I don't know. I don't know. But I don't understand why he would get rid of the wheel and why not just the tire. You know what I'm saying? But he actually swapped out the entire rim too. So either he damaged the rim, or when he put his kill kit in the trunk, somehow came in contact or something, and he didn't feel confident enough to keep it with him, or that he was going to clean it properly and got rid of it and disposed of it. Thank you. Appreciate that, Psychic Reverend Donna. Appreciate that. All right, what about the data from the Strava app? I thought that was going to be how they got him close. Apparently, he was able to wipe out his phone quite a bit. And from what I heard, there was an app on his device that was deleting things even after he was arrested when his phone was returned on. There's missing gaps and pieces of things, but Yeah. So according to Bill Thompson, he was successful in getting rid of a lot of things. Daniel, can you please look up? Oh, yeah, that's the one I just looked. Yes. Yeah. What's going on, Canadian True Crime Buff? Buffy, I'm glad to see you here. Can you please look up the Johnson Road? I'll look it up real quick on here. So 5904 John. Ooh. Sorry, guys. My hand doesn't work as quite as it used to. Well, it's probably this house here. Or one of these houses. And then, guys, this doesn't mean for anybody to go out there also and like start digging on this guy's house. But I'm gonna look it up real quick. $275. You can't really zoom in or anything like that, but got some red trees back there. Yeah. No, it's a little bit. Do you know what kind of shovel we had? We do not. Documents indicate that it's plastic. Now I don't know if that means that the entire thing is plastic or if only part of it is. Where'd it go? I guess I closed it. But let me pull it up real quick. So to me, I'm just not sure if it's. Oh no, my computer's kind of going slow. It might be kind of time to end the show soon before it crashes on me. But this is a shovel that has a plastic handle with a fiberglass pole that feels plasticky, and obviously a steel shovel. This is another one that's slightly smaller. This is used for digging. This would fit in his in Bryan Kohberger's trunk. And then it could have been something like this, but the way they described that the dirt was wedged into it, to me, that sounds like there's edges and corners and things like that for the dirt to get caught up and wedged into it. If it was an item like this and there was dirt on it, I would assume it'd be caked on it, given the fact that it was probably moist or whatever the case may be when there was digging. So I don't see an edge on this for it to be wedged into. I don't know what type of shovel it is, but my assumption is it's probably one of these fiberglass ones, something like that. Daniel, have you seen the clock change on the cops watching the underage drinking that night? Creator saying the clock jumps back and changes time on body cam. No. The only thing I've seen change is on that Epstein jail file. Now that one changes. There's a cursor that moves, the frame changes, the size of the camera changes. There's a lot of things that go on. Now with those body cam footage, there was a lot of things that I wouldn't be surprised if they redacted something, and maybe that might have something to do with something, because they were edited. And what was edited was like when they were giving out their personal information in some of those videos that was muted, but I haven't seen any time jumps. She made it longer. Oh, okay. I'll check it out. Floodplains near Moscow, Paradise Creek, Hog Creek, and South Fork, and the Palouse. Yeah, I went through it with Grok, and I was explaining to Grok all the information that I had found, And I was like, does this make sense? And I even sent Grok pictures of the trees that I found. They're like, yeah, those look like those maple trees. And I put it on the Discord. So if you guys go check out our Discord, if you want to become a member, check out the Discord, and it'll you guys can see what Grok answered. I find it interesting that he had told the police during the interviews in PA that he was going back in the spring and wanted a TA again. He knew he was fired. That's true. That is true. He stayed in hotels in the way to Pennsylvania and doesn't sleep, so he could have buried it at night. Oops. Yeah, the only thing of that is that the soil came from Moscow, so nowhere east, so it wasn't on his way out there. Now, he could have, if, there's possible that if the shovel had nothing to do with the disposal or the destruction of evidence when it came to the knife and the kill kit, then yeah, 100%. But if the soil on the shovel had something to do with it, then no. But I can't say 100% one way or the other. And as far as he would put his dad, like, doubtful, plus he had his dad in tow, I don't really think he cared. He put his friend, like, I doubt it too. But like, would he have cared if he put somebody else, like, in trouble legally? And he didn't care about his friend when he went to go pick up heroin. Remember that in her car? Let's see. Daniel, you don't get the significance of Snake River. Do your homework. I've done my homework on it, but let's see what you have to say. There were bodies found in the river and Lewiston serial killer back in the day. You get a charge out of that. I don't disagree with that, but the thing is, at the end of the day, he left the area behind the Moscow house in the early morning hours, and it took him 28 minutes to travel 9 miles. And then the next day, he's back in that area with his phone off, obviously going back to a significant area of something that occurred that night. My opinion is to go pick up the kill kit. So if he's going to go pick up the kill kit at 5, I don't think he's throwing the kill kit or the knife and those things into the Snake River before then, while he was in Lewiston or in Clarkston, Washington. The timeline doesn't add up. Now, is it possible that he kept the kill kit and maybe he did throw things in there? Yeah, it's possible. Definitely is. And maybe he went and buried something else and went back for that. I don't see it as the most logical thing, but I do understand the significance. Also, the soil wouldn't match out there in near Snake River with what they were looking for as far as what was on the soil on the shovel. I've done quite a bit of homework. PVC pipe burial, which protects against detection and decay. I also remember hearing that he was hiking at night, scared the crap out of some group of people popping out of nowhere. Could have been planning to place to hide. It's possible. I just feel like he probably wouldn't be. I find it hard for him to, given the, I know I'm kind of stumbling with what I'm trying to say here, but given the amount of like discipline that it required for him not to visit the house again, not be Papa Roger, not be involved in online and those type of things, I think he would have known not to place the knife in a place that he commonly goes to. Now, I think he would have wanted to see it and maybe perhaps placed it in an area where he can visit it, but not something that was open to people and open to everybody, something that he'd have to share with everyone like that. Seems like a selfish person, something to himself, something hidden, something private. And so I just don't see a public area being something that he would do. Now, this area that I had found is on the way there. I think that would definitely, he'd have he can stop on his hike out or on his way to his hiking and things like that. Now, let me pull this off real quick. I'm going to switch this over here so I can see the big screen. I have 2 different computer screens, and one's a little bit smaller and further away. Lisa comes in with $10. Daniel, do you have the dates of the first mentioned Elantra, the time of day on December 13th? He was going through Loma, Colorado per license plate reader, and the date he looked for another knife or sheath. So he was looking for a knife sheath within a week. after the murders. He no longer looked for one while he was in Pennsylvania. He had stopped when he had gone to Pennsylvania, and I think that had to do with the bolo and him getting out of Dodge. And I think he was really worried about them being onto him. In his interrogation, he brought up another instance where a law enforcement vehicle pulled up behind him at a high rate of speed and then just passed him, and he thought it was interesting. Then you accompany that with the 2 stops in Indiana. He's probably a little bit paranoid. So, but up until that point, it sounds like he thought he got away with it. So him looking for another knife, to me, wasn't because he was going to commit the crime again. He had pictures of other women on his phone from the area, and I think he was potentially considering, in my opinion. But he stopped looking for the knife when he was in Pennsylvania. I think that's because he was probably in fear that they were coming from him. And then we have Deborah Myers coming in with $5. Thank you for showing us this stuff. I pray someone finds a knife in his clothes. I just bought the Patterson book, got it today. What do you think of the book? I think the book is good. There's some parts that I kind of question it. Like, it kind of seems like they're attacking the Goncalves family to a certain extent. Not completely, but, it kind of seems a little weird when it comes to the G's. In some parts, not all of it. But I thought that it was beautifully written. I thought that they really try to focus in on the victims and not so much on Bryan Kohberger, but the parts that they did talk about Bryan Kohberger and the parts about the case I thought were impactful. We actually broke it down. I have a playlist. So if you want to read it and then kind of get my interpretation of what I saw when I read through it, go check that out, guys. I have a playlist. I think it's like 5 parts to it. And I broke down the new information that's out of it. I didn't read everything. I didn't read the whole book. I left a lot of meat on the bone for people to go out there and read it themselves. But I did want to kind of talk about certain things that we had questions about, certain things that we got answers for, certain things that we may have knew the answers, but we're just waiting on confirmation. All right, guys. I think that's going to do it for me today. I hope you guys have a great one. I'll probably be back on maybe tomorrow. We'll see. Hold on. I thought I saw something about Epstein. Yeah, I do think that Epstein was definitely that whole video there. That's weird. Let's see. There's no such thing as stupid questions, but I recall seeing on the news investigators outside of King Roadhouse looking for tire track. Oh, okay. Never mind. That was one I already read. Yeah, guys, we're getting close to 50,000. So if you guys can please hit the subscribe button and ring that notification bell, you guys know what to do. I'll be back probably tomorrow night with something new to talk about. So until then, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
But it's too late now. I remember you and me, and how careless we could be.
All day and all night, we'd stay up, it felt so right. We were so young, we were so dumb. We would get drunk and then hook up. We were okay, we were alright, staying awake till the sunrise. We were in love, couldn't stop us, like a good drug, never enough.
We hook up in my car, driving so far, play you guitar, you'd show me your art, let down our guards, think with our hearts, stare at the stars, we were never apart, drinking too young, way too much fun, out in the sun, or rain when it's gone, took you to prom, dance to our song, dance all night long till the lights come on.
Now I remember everything, and how careless we could be, and how careless we could be.